Okay, it's literally a miracle to try to schedule this interview with my friend Farya because we've had like scheduling mishaps and the whole thing. And we've been trying to plan this for months, but we are here.
We are here.
Thank you for being here today with me, Farya.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm so excited to talk to you a little bit more and just get to know a little bit more about your history. We first met at an event. Actually, Farya posted in a group that she wanted to get to know me. We were in this Mixermind group and we ended up having a coffee chat. And it was so funny because now looking back and meeting you in real life and how hilarious you are and how like energetic you are, that coffee chat to me was like really funny because we were all being like, so tell me about your business and
Yeah.
everything at this point.
That's the problem with all these like formal coffee chats. Yes, it's great to get to know each other, but you don't really feel each other's energy until you're in a while, I guess.
In the wild, yes. So I'm excited to talk to you today. So before we dive in, why don't you give everyone a little bit of your background because you're such a badass and I feel like you underplay it a little bit. You are an amazing, incredible human.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm a clinical psychologist and I help entrepreneurs, leaders, and founders work with their invisible barriers that they are not necessarily able to get rid of by traditional business coaching or, mindset, hacks or even, all this motivational space that, or the conversations that we're having. So I help them not just to increase their capacity when it comes to financial capacity, leadership capacity, but I also help them move away from survival success to a success that's more sustainable and it is more aligned with who they are, as well as keeping their edge and keeping their, that high achiever energy. Because a lot of people think that, okay, once you actually go through this process and you look at all these invisible barriers, then you're just going to be not as ambitious. And I'm like, that is completely wrong. You can actually achieve 10 times more by not working necessarily harder, but firstly, smarter. And secondly, by working with what some people don't like to hear, but working with your trauma responses. So as soon as people, especially high achievers, hear the word trauma, they're like, no, I don't have any trauma and I don't want to do kind of traditional healing or whatever. And that's exactly what I'm not doing. This is not trauma healing. This is not therapy or mindset work. This is a combination of success strategies combined with all the other avenues, somatic work, trauma work, all the other jazz that you need in order to really reprogram the inner architecture of what's actually at the driver's seat. Because most of the time, and this is what I've noticed working with high achievers, is that first of all, they don't identify as high achievers because they're such, they always want more. So they always think, oh, okay, they're not where they want to be. And secondly, they push through, they get some success, but it has a cap and it all usually comes with a price to pay. And they just take it as, okay, well, this is just how it is. This is the price of success. This is the price of this is the price of, I don't know, having more income. And what they don't realize is that actually you're operating from a trauma-led success, which is, a survival process. You're not operating from your thriving place. And that's what usually really changes the game dramatically and drastically,
I'm like, why are you yelling at me right now?
I think the mic is so close to me and I'm just like,
No, I'm
and
joking.
I
You didn't get the
also,
joke. You did not get the joke.
no,
You
I
usually do.
didn't.
No, it's so when someone says, why are you yelling at me right now? But like in a soft voice, it's like, why are you calling me out?
Oh, you see, this is it.
I'm just joking.
I am just so in a like a podcast mode. I did not catch your joke right there.
Well, the funny thing too is like we both get on this call. We've been trying to connect and I have so many questions about there's a lot to unravel in what you just said. So we're going to go right into that. The funny thing, I have a splitting headache right now. You have a little bit of a cold and we're
Yes.
like, we've been trying to get this going for so long. We are not going to reschedule. And
No.
I
And
see that is like trauma-led success right there.
of course it is. I mean, make no mistake. But the thing is the funny thing is because me and you have such banter, and we're always like joking around and having a laugh. At times I find it, difficult to switch to,
To be
that's
serious,
why I
we
didn't
can
touch
have
the joke,
laughs. Let's have
because
as many laughs as we possibly can.
yes,
I'm so excited.
please.
So I feel like there's so much to unravel in what you just said. And I'm probably going to forget the word, because you said something about people who there's a barrier and a cost to not unraveling or cleaning up this trauma. And I will tell you that I work with a lot of people who have invisible ceilings, or that they get capped. And I feel like I've capped my revenue at certain points of my life, and we don't even know why. And, if we're operating out of fight or flight, or as you said, like a trauma response, we're sometimes unaware of it. And I want to kind of break down first and foremost, I would love to know, what have you seen in your clients? Like, what are some of those invisible barriers and how do they show up?
When we are talking about trauma, it's very important to clarify what it is, because a lot of people think that it's something gigantic that has happened to you. And whilst that might be true, it's, to me, the definition that I have is every time you had to abandon yourself or betray yourself in order to fit in, to be accepted, to be loved, your system, your nervous system and your body experiences that as something, initially just something that's just not right. And then when that happens over time, it experiences it as trauma, because it's so far away to who you are, and how you're betraying yourself is a way. So when we're talking about trauma, it's so important to have that in mind, because we're not talking about a big event. We're talking about how all these micro events would have impacted you and how you internalized and interpreted those. So the way that it comes up, and it's very interesting, it comes up. Nobody ever comes to me saying, you know what, I've got traumas that I want to unblock. Literally no one, right? So I'm actually using my language. That's not how they would describe it. They all usually come to me with, when they've reached a certain level and they are now wanting to expand, let's say. And they've tried different strategies, and they've got all the material, everything. And of course, as you know, information is so accessible these days that they get all the information that they need to scale. But somehow something is not moving the needle, or, they have all the right strategies and everything when it comes to raising, let's say, their prices, and then when it comes to presenting it, even though they go by the script, something that in their energy just shifts, and it just they're not able to deliver. They usually describe it as things like maybe undercharging, maybe castinating, or maybe I'm self-sabotaging. And it just takes them a minute and a lot of explaining on my part to go, actually, it's none of those. It is none of those. Your system is just protecting you at the level that it knows you're going to be safe. And anything outside of that, no matter how much you push, you might override your nervous system and get to some level, but your system will cap it at some point, because your system is not there to make you money or make you successful. Your system is there to keep you alive. That's the most important thing. So when it comes to your safety and your sense of being alive, that's always going to take the priority, right? So because of that, people usually think, okay, let me just try another strategy. Let me push through. Let me expand,
Build
or
another funnel.
yes, another funnel. And also, and I know you know that very well, sometimes a lot of the mindset hacks and everything, they keep you on the surface. Whereas affirmations and all of that, they are great, but only and only if your system is able to receive that. If you're closed off, if you're in survival, you cannot affirm your way out of a trauma response. That's just not possible. So then people try all those things and they come back with, well, maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe I'm just not made for this, right? And that to me is the biggest price that we pay, especially as women, because we also, on top of everything else that we are carrying, we also have lots and lots of intergenerational trauma, right? Around being seen, around earning a lot of money, around, having a voice. So our body, our genetics, it associates being seen or earning a lot of money with danger anyway. Even if you individually haven't, your ancestors, your intergenerationally, that's in your body, if that makes sense. So we have to climb a lot of ladders. And people just, a lot of the times also, the strategies and the way that we describe success is coming, a lot of them are coming from men, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a whole different system. They have a very different nervous system. They have a very different way of processing and dealing with their trauma responses. It's not the same.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why a lot of the times, you're thinking, why am I not waking up at 5 o'clock, jumping into ice,
Ice
buckets?
bath.
Or
Oh God, no.
gosh, no. Like, but then we have different, our nervous system has a different sense of safety.
Okay. So you've been talking about survival mode a lot. How does that
Yes.
show up?
So I created this concept and a model, like moving from trauma-led success, survival success to reparative success. So survival is a lot of, I'm sure your clients as well, they would have had a vision, a desire that was almost inside of them when they're from way back, right? So they
Mm-hmm.
had this, like, they just have this knowing, this something that they want to be able to express. But over the years, we don't stay our innocent young selves. We go through lots of programming. We learn things from our environment. We internalize a lot of things. And then people start to operate based on that. What I mean is, let's say somebody who's a high achiever, they're not high achievers because they are trying to manifest their desires. Initially, they're high achievers because they had no choice but to be,
Mm-hmm.
because their sense
I
of
feel
being, I don't
that.
know, praised or, yeah, accepted or loved or whatever was dependent on
Performance.
being independent, being in control, being strong, being, and these are all
Being
happening.
responsible.
Being responsible. I mean, honestly, if one more person says to me that I am a very strong person, and I am, I will
Yeah,
just lose
same.
it, because
You're strong
because
and
it's,
responsible. Like,
yes, yes, and we are, but that didn't come from wanting to expand. That came from necessity. So
Mhm.
now that necessity, that urgency, or that threat is not there anymore. But our default position has been, let's just, operate on that. So when you move away from that, you take a breather and you go, you know what? This is about your desire now. This is not about necessity. This is not about, and we don't know much about desire, to be fair, because nobody taught us. They told us how to survive, but nobody
Mm.
told us how to kind of really, I mean, unless you're very, very lucky. I am yet to see somebody who just has learned from their environment that all you have to do is thrive and attend to your desire. No, we learn to survive. We learn to overcome problems and difficulties, however we learn to do them. And then we want to apply that in business. Now, that gets you to some level, but then it stops there, because what got you here is not going
Yeah.
to take you there.
Right. So I feel like there's so much to unpack here. Like, how does one shift from survival to thriving? Yeah, everything
Well,
that you're saying just like lands with me so much in a lot of ways, because being the second oldest of 8 children and having parents growing up in a very chaotic environment where my parents definitely were passionate about each other, but they're passionate in general. And there's lots of yelling and screaming. And the coping mechanisms that I created are just like, okay, people pleasing and being responsible and taking care of the younger kids and, just fending for myself because I felt like that's all I could do in a
mhm.
way. I
Yeah,
see it
and
now so clearly in how it's showing up in my life these days. How does one break out of that?
it was interesting you asked me this, because you, as yourself, you have overcome a lot of them. With maybe you didn't name it as a trauma
Mm.
response, maybe you didn't see it as a survival pattern. But if you think about it, you're people pleasing. From what I know of you, you are very outspoken. You're not a people pleaser now. You
I
might be
am
a
a
little
people
bit, but
pleaser in a lot
that's
of ways. It's annoying, but
but you've trained yourself to kind of speak up, have a voice, take up space, take the
Mhm.
leadership position. Now, the thing is, not every trauma response is a negative thing, right? Trauma actually gives us, believe it or not, this is a bit controversial, but trauma gives us gifts. And one of them is resilience, like being able to read the room before everybody else, because you learned, if your house is a little bit chaotic, you
Oh,
learn
I'm
to
so good at
tune,
reading the room.
right?
I'm like,
And now
stay away from
that's
that person. Like,
and
I'm like,
that's
those are the safe
actually
people.
helpful. Yes, and that's helpful to your business. But the other part, for example, being small, staying small, you realized along the way that because otherwise you wouldn't have su- succeeded in the ways that you have, right? So you
Mhm.
have worked, whether or not you were aware of it, you worked with some of them. And I know that you're aware of a lot of those things because I know that you do a lot of work for you on yourself and you
I
go
do.
through processes. So you would have. But the first step is, and this is the part where people get a bit surprised. The first step would be to actually recognize that where you are, and I could tell you hand on heart that most, if not all, high achievers, very successful business owners, if they haven't done the work, most, if not all of them, are operating from a survival level. And
Yeah.
that's why we hear burnouts. That's why we hear,
Mhm.
something is, they're compromising relationships. This is the reason why that happens. Now, that's not a problem as such, as long as you become aware that, okay, what are some of the things that I want to take away from the trauma response, like you did, that helps you and your business with intention and awareness? And what are some of the things that are not serving me anymore, right? That they
Mhm.
don't belong to here and now. Like how, Tracy, how, you being a people pleaser, how is this going to help you in your business, right? So
Right.
yeah, you kind of, you're smart enough to gather that out and go through the process and everything else. And this is the thing. I'm just saying that, and I know you went through a lot, and you've done a lot of stuff. I'm just saying it doesn't have to be that hard. How do I know? Because I went through a lot and I went through all these shifts and realizing things, even though I've been a psychologist for 23 years. So but still I had so many blind spots when it came to my own self, right? I thought I had it all figured out. And then I entered entrepreneurship. And I was like, okay, like there is a
Here we
whole
go.
other level. Yes, there's a whole
Well,
other level.
can you give me an example of how you kind of came over one of your blind spots? If it's
This
not
is
too
so funny.
personal.
No, 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 no.
I
Like
think personal
I try
examples
to
are
be an
good.
open book.
Yeah.
I remember one of the things that I always assumed about people was that everything that I'm saying, people already know. So
Mhm.
I was always thinking, like, how is this, a big, I'm not telling them something that they don't know. And I always thought that the value that you bring to the table for anything, even your friendships, not just in business, is having something very unique and just like, and that really stopped me from so many different opportunities that came along my way. So I remember this is nearly at the beginning of my career. I was asked to speak in a setting which I really wanted to do, but then I actually did not at that point because I thought, no, it's just they're all going to be like really, really academic people. And I've just got my doctorate now, and I'm not going to, what do I have to offer? And then through that, and a few other examples like that, where I actually missed an opportunity. Even as you know, I recently launched my podcast, and even in that came up actually. And I thought, oh, is this going to be, should I really simplify my message? Should I do the, and then obviously I didn't because I'm too stubborn, right? So I realized that one of the main reasons as to why I always think everybody knows is because my mom was, I mean, she was lovely, right? But my God, that woman was a know-it-all, right? And
Oh my
every,
gosh.
honestly, and because she was also she was like very highly educated, and it was so important to her for us to be reading all the time. So it was always the test. I would go and she would just ask me random things about, so what's happening in so and so country? And I'm like, I don't know.
You're like,
And then
what?
I know, because she was like, well, what are you doing in your spare time if you're not reading? Some of that actually helped me because I became a big reader. But then some of that stayed with me in that way of thinking, okay, I'm gonna like say something and everybody's gonna know it, because it was always the same thing with my mom. Every time I said
Mhm.
something, she would be like, well, that's something that a 10-year-old would know. Like, you need to do better. You need to know better. So that kind of stayed with me, and really until I processed it and cried over it and did all the
Mhm.
things, right? And really kind of embraced that, my inner knowing that you can just be who you are, offer what you have to offer. Your tribe will find you, And whoever that doesn't want you, they're not your people anyway,
Mhm.
right? And I kind of went along with that, and that gave me a lot of success. So I became really more mindful of how else am I operating from an autopilot without checking in. Is this mine? Or am I just trying to be
Yes.
my dad or my mom or whatever that I've learned?
Let's talk about that because I feel like a lot of us take on other people's emotions. And Jason, I think one of the things that is a trauma response for me, because Jason works with men just like you
Yeah.
work with women, entrepreneurs. I think we talked about this before. And he's like, part of the reason why you're really struggling right now, for instance, with me being angry or this person on your team being upset with you, is because you're checking in to see if they're okay, to see if you're okay. It's like
Yeah.
this weird thing. You probably know a little bit more about what that means and talk about it a little bit more. And that is one of the things. And I feel like that kind of ties into the people pleasing. It's like, I don't want people to be upset, even though I upset people all the time. And the people pleasing part for me actually started eking in so badly to my leadership that because I was not actually leading in all cases in my history in different parts of my time, I end up disappointing people and then they end up underperforming, and then I go the other way and start like being a boss, and then they're like, well, what the heck? And then the relationship's all weird. So can you talk a little bit about that when people are externalizing their, I don't know if it's a well-being or feeling okay when other people around them are not okay?
Yeah, I think it's not always about other people around you not being okay. It is
Okay,
about
let's talk about that.
what you assume about them. I mean, that's a whole other
Mm,
layer, right?
right.
Because you're coming in with that assumption that, oh, they're not okay, or maybe I said something, or so you're already coming in with with that assumption and with that energy, right? So they
Yep.
may respond to that energy, which then you take as evidence of, I knew that. So that's,
Mhm.
that, see, they're not okay. And that happens a lot of the times. And I tell you one thing that I see that happening more, obviously in relationship is one thing. In sales, that happens a lot, believe it or not. When
Themselves?
yeah, when people are trying to sell their
Oh,
services, right? And
sales.
they're having
Okay,
a,
sales. I
yeah,
thought you meant in your cells in your body. I was like, the cells do that
no,
too?
no, 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 no. That's just my accent. No. So it's that, in sales, that happens a lot because when you go into the room and you are so caught up in how you're being perceived and what impact what you're saying is going to have on the other person, that you're completely misreading what they are presenting. And you're losing, a lot of the times people lose a good client or a good sale because of that, because you're so concerned about, not concerned, you're so into your own reactions and watching and going, okay, am I sort of selling it properly? Is this price appropriate? Is the thing that I'm describing, i.e. my service, is it hitting the right note? So you're just in, whereas the person in front of you is literally just wanting you to hold them through the process, right? And to
Mhm.
assure them that you are going to be able to help them. Really, that's
Mhm.
all what people want in that
Mhm.
process. And I see that, and it's so interesting because we always link this, what you said, to just relationships. But actually, who we are in a relationship is who we are in our business, because we have a relationship with our business too, right?
Like a
So we
toxic
have,
relationship with someone, you might have a toxic
yes,
Well, I joke about this a lot. Maybe we'll talk about it on your podcast, but I definitely built my business out of a trauma response of the worst thing that one of the worst things that I feel like the worst thing that happened in my life was my mother passing away when I was 21 years old. But this was one of the most significant things. When I went bankrupt
hmm,
in 2009 after the market crashed, I was devastated. And so one of the things that I wanted to do was literally my mission was like, I wanted to help jewelry business owners so that this never happened to them as well. And that's
yeah,
literally coming out of a trauma. And I
yes,
couldn't figure out when I was like wanting to pivot or shift the way that I was doing things, or I was having a hard time with how I was coaching people or who I was coaching and stuff like that, where it came from. And it took me literally 5 years to figure out that I'd had basically that the business was built on a trauma response. And
yeah,
part of the reason that I was dissatisfied with my business, having this toxic relationship with my business, was because of that, because I kept reliving the trauma every day.
Yes.
When I actually realized that, I was like, OMFG.
Yes, that does something to you when you have that moment, aha moment. That's when
I was
things
like,
start
no
to shift,
wonder.
right?
It's like we're punching each other every day. And I had to shift the relationship to keep the business going. Because if I didn't, and also shift how I was showing up in the offer, because I think the frustration I was having was, I want people to get results in their business. Yet there's a significant number of people who do, but then there's the small variation of the ones that were not getting results because they weren't doing the work. And then I'm sitting here trying to convince them to do something and they're not doing it. And then I would get frustrated because I'm like, but you're supposed to be getting a result because this works. And
Yes.
it's like the cyclical thing. So how do
Yeah,
you,
yeah, yeah.
do you know what I'm saying?
No, absolutely. I mean, the funny thing is, most of us, again, if not all, we start by a trauma response, something,
Yes.
because that's what drives us. That's what, we don't start with, okay, again, what I was saying earlier
That's
about
perfect.
desire. We never start with that. We start by, okay, how can I, something that would be a huge, huge drive, right? And I would say that's okay to begin with, but we've got to shift that because as you experience, it has a cap. And I think, for me, it's really funny because when I think about it, I remember I had this particular moment, right? Where it was almost like I was looking at myself from the outside, right? And I was like in the internal battle. So what
Yeah.
happened was that I was in a conversation with a team, and the idea was to talk about potentially collaborating with them. And what they were saying, and I knew that this was an amazing opportunity for me, but it was so funny because a part of me was literally just like, climbing out of me to say, yes, let's do this. And the other part was holding it back, going, no, 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 that is just your trauma pattern going, okay, I'll take it. If it's, and I remember at that moment, I literally like taking deep breaths because I was like, nope, you're not accepting it because you know that what you're going to offer is going to be worth a lot more than that, right?
Yeah.
And it was something personal. It wasn't just about money. It was about, okay, I need to make this moment count for myself. So I
Mhm.
remember once they kind of stopped talking, I just said to them, I said, I don't think you're even suitable to work with me. And I was sweating and I was like dying inside. I don't even know how I said it. And they were like, why? I said, because you want to take, and I remember that this stupid sentence. I don't even know where it came from, if I'm being honest. I just remember saying, you want to take on a race car and you want to go around doing your grocery shopping with it. It's not going to work. Me being the race car and them,
Yeah.
what they were saying was like, and I was like, no, 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 you want a race car, you want to win. That's what you get a race car for. And if you want to win, then, you have to compensate accordingly. Now, for the life of me, Tracy, I have no idea where these things came from. And I've never used this like kind of metaphorical way of speaking. I've never done that. But I remember I did actually impress them quite a bit. And I ended up getting the deal that I wanted. But more than that, that was a very important moment for me to go, you've got it in you. It's just that you are so committed. You've been so committed and you've been married to your old programming, thinking that you
Mhm.
need to be loyal to it. Whereas you really don't. You don't have, you don't owe anybody anything. Right. And when I looked at it, it was mainly because my family's relationship with money was like really messed up, right?
Mhm.
Because they had lots and lots of money to begin with. And then through the revolution, they lost everything, right? So to us, and then
For people who
after
are
that,
listening to this, do you want to explain what you mean by through the revolution? Because they might not have the context.
so I'm Persian. So what happened was, we went through this about 47 years ago. We went through this revolution and everything changed, right? So we had the, king was kicked out, and then I would say we were invaded by
Mhm.
Islamic
Yes.
Republic of Iran. And this is what the fight is right now at the moment.
Yes.
So we lost everything, right? And we had to literally leave the country. So from that space of being like queen, like when it came to my mom, auntie, everything that I've seen, suddenly we are just in a new place and everything. And we have to start from scratch. Not only that, but we have to constantly prove ourselves to be,
Mm.
because we don't know the culture, we don't know the language, we don't know, any of those things. So I learned very early on, in order, I mean, take it as you will, but this is my internal programming, that in order for me to be at the top of my class, I have to be always 10 or 20 steps ahead of everybody else,
Mm.
to be counted as equal. Do you know what I mean? Again,
Oh,
that's
wow.
just
That's a heavy burden right
right.
there.
In a way, that resulted in me getting success, finishing my studies, doing all this stuff. But then at some point, so it helped me to some degree, being that trauma led success. But at some point, I was thinking, okay, that needs to end. I mean, this is a different thing. And I'm not carrying my mother's sort of burden. I'm not carrying my family's burden. Now, I mean, mine is a bit more dramatic, but I know that we all have in our families, we all have burdens that don't belong to us. And the moment that you realize that you don't need to commit to that, let it go. Like, let it
Mm.
go. But in order to do that, you need to first dig in and find out what that is.
Oh, it's so good. So tell me a little bit more about your process for helping people unravel this.
I came to this this kind of unraveling this by accident. Firstly, because of myself, because I was determined not to just heal and feel better. I got to the point I was thinking, well, I'm feeling better, but I don't want this. I want to be great. I want to
Mm.
like create things. I want to create legacy, wealth, everything. I don't just want to be okay. So I thought, oh, okay. So the work that I'm doing needs to go beyond that. I
Mm.
can't, and, with all due respect to therapists out there, I cannot be a therapist only. And I cannot be this. And I wanted to use all of that in order to really move the needle and get people to that point of, how good can it get for you? Like, let's just go crazy. How good do you want it to get for you? So now I work with people individually. I have using my method, which is called Method by Farya Barlas, and I work in my program as well. And I just actually released something to, because I realized that a lot of people are this, struggling with pricing and everything, and not to do with the script and all the stuff, but about how to show up in that setting. So I just
Like to chart
really.
command a higher price point.
Yes, yes, because something
Mm.
happens inside of us. So I help with people and I work with people. Again, not people, but it has to be people who have got some level of success. So they have to be seasoned entrepreneurs, only because this kind of work will be a lot more impactful for these people. Whereas if you're right at the beginning, you need to do the other work first and then get to
Mm.
this, if that makes sense. So I work with, as I said, seasoned entrepreneurs, founders, and leaders, and I work with them on a one-to-one basis, container, and I work with them using my the method by Farya Barlas, which is a combination of coaching, trauma work, somatic work, aligned action, leadership, you name it. I just
All of
put
it.
everything in one container and I thought, here it is. I'm creating this model and it's going to have everything in it. So, and then I've got my group work that is within that container, and I use the same thing in my individual one-to-one work.
In your group program, is it multiple entrepreneurs in the group, or how does that work?
I do small groups, and it's not just one. So, which I need to think about because it's really taking up my time. But I do tend to like divide them into small groups so that
Mm.
they can get really, because results is my satisfaction, right? So if I know that they're
Same.
getting that result that they want, that's the thing that drives me. So then we go through a 12 weeks, or 12 weeks is 3 months. Sorry,
Yes.
my brain is not
Something
working.
like that.
So 12 weeks or 6 months or a year. So they can go through it and
Mhm.
extend it. And they have access to everything. And then I show up once a week. So they've got access to all the teaching, but I actually do the experiential work with them once a week because I don't want to be teaching, right? I want them to experience the shift rather than me
Yes.
talking at them.
Teaching
So
a new
they are.
concept, right?
Yes. So all the
Exactly.
teaching, all the material, all the, the drill, right? All the tools they get access to in the portal, but then once a week I show up and then we go through the process together it's just honestly, as I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking that's just too hands-on, too hands-on. But I love it. I love to, yeah.
You're
So
such a
that's
badass. You're so good. So Farya, where can everyone find you if they want to learn more about your work or just say hi to you or listen to your
Yes, for sure. I mean, definitely check out my podcast, From Trauma to CEO. And Tracy is going to be my guest soon as well, which is, you definitely have to check it out. Also, my website is faryabarlas.com. And my Instagram is, I hang out there. That's where me and you chit chat a lot
Yeah.
on Instagram. I don't even know
We're like,
why.
she's always on here.
I know. So that's Farya Barlas psychologist. So you can find me there. Come and say hello. Check out the work that we do. And there's lots of free resources that you can actually have to see where you're at, how you're operating, and how you can improve.
Amazing. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.